Hello everybody, welcome to Voxel Viewpoint. It's Game of the Year season, and we're here, as always, to round up the year 2020 and talk about the games that had the most impact on us, our games of the year, if you will. I'm Ryan, and with me I've got Derek.
Hey, how's it going?
And Lee.
Happy Apocalypse, everyone.
Yeah, apocalypse is over. 2020 is over.
Oh,
So the apocalypse is over officially. They just turned it off overnight,
yeah.
and we're in 2021 now. So we'll start Apocalypse 2 right now.
The reboot.
Yeah, the sequel.
7 hours in and it's already the
Yeah,
same.
the revenge.
2020 remastered.
Yeah.
And as our streaks for some remasters, pretty bad.
Yeah. All right. So before
Right,
we start on 2020 games, we have a couple of games that made our lists that didn't come out in 2020. Derek, you had Borderlands 3 on your top list. Why is Borderlands 3 here? What was so special about that game this year?
So we finally started to go back through it as it was complete. All the DLCs has released. With the next gen consoles coming out, like the PlayStation 5 version came out as well, so I dove into that for a little bit. And it was just a fun experience playing with the group of friends I normally play through. And, we went through the game start to finish, hit up all the DLCs. We're doing all the side quests, missions that we didn't normally do when the game originally launched, and they weren't there. So that's kind of when it hit my top, because it was one of those things that we really sank some time into this year. And some of the DLCs did come out this year, so kind of like a weird time with gaming.
Yeah, was it how were the DLCs? Were they good?
They were really good. They were it was a lot of fun. One was like a wedding that we did between Hammerlock and one of the newer characters they had brought in.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of had like your Lovecraftian vibe and all, and so you went through that whole story. Um, the newer one was the Psychoscape, where you were inside Krieg's mind, and that was just like a nutty blast, kind of like that far out humor and stuff that you're used to from Borderlands. And that was the one that kind of like wrapped up three. That was the last one that came out.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a lot of fun.
All right, cool. Yeah. So my list is Astroneer, which came out of early access last year, and I've been playing that off and on here and there. But this game's on my list specifically because it was the one that I sunk the most time into when, kind of like the early summer when the lockdowns and the pandemic was kind of in its most unknown time. And that was just a game that I kept going back to as kind of like a way to keep my mind off of other stuff that was going on. It's a pretty relaxing survival exploration building game. You have like that terrain vacuum that you can suck up all sorts of different types of terrain. You find resources, you find objects out there to research. I went way farther in like the progression of all the tech than I've ever have. I actually flew to other planets, not all of them. I didn't make it to every single planet, but I kind of got an idea of what the full experience of that game is, which was pretty cool. And yeah, so that was a game that I just sunk a lot of time into this year. And it's a great game that they keep adding little things to. I kind of fell off right when they added in their first automation update, so I didn't really have time to delve into that too much, but they are adding some pretty substantial systems to the game as time goes on, so I'll probably check it out again some other time as well. Now, Lee, did you ever dive into Astroneer as well?
At the very, very beginning, I did. I didn't really get much other than that initial launch.
Mm-hmm.
I keep looking at it, meaning go back at it, but have they changed much from that initial kind of burst release? I think I pretty much played the beta of it, and that was about it.
Yeah, it was in early access for a long time.
Yeah, early access. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the last I played it. I did like what I played.
Yeah, they've changed. They've changed some things, and they've added a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously, from the early access stuff, and even through early access, they had a lot of things that they changed. So I don't really know what kind of situation you experienced. Like at one point, there were storms that would sweep through, and you'd have to hide in your pod to protect yourself.
I'm
And
pretty sure when I first played it, it wasn't even interplanetary then. I'm sure it was just one planet. So,
oh yeah, I'm not sure what stage along they added more planets. But yeah, it's more. They basically turned it into like a resource hunt in a lot of ways because each planet has specific resources, and if you want to, build all the things and go all the way down the tech trees, you need to go to each planet, collect a whole bunch of those resources, and ultimately bring them back to a central spot where you're constructing everything. So, yeah, and there's a thing to do, like a final mission or quest type thing, but they keep a lot of that mysterious and for you to kind of figure it out on your own. Yeah, so that's Astroneer, and that's going to bring us into 2020 proper. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go through these games in release order. Some of them appear on multiple people's lists. There's only one that appears on all three. So like last year, we're going to christen that one the official game of the year, because it's the only one that appears on all three of our lists. But we're going to kick it off first in 2020 with Ori and the Will of the Wisps. That game came out in March, and that is, of course, a sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest, which is a really like hand-drawn, beautiful platformer that came out on Xbox and PC, and it is basically just an expansion of all of the things that first game did. It's a Metroidvania-style action platformer with a probably bigger emphasis on the action than... Well, no, I guess it's probably a combination of both. They do a really good job of blending the action and the platforming in this game. And yeah, it's really just it feels a lot like the game that they originally wanted to make with Blind Forest in a lot of ways, because it even kind of retells a little bit of the same story. It feels like it's the same, feels like the same setup, same kind of story arc, and it's just much bigger. The map is a lot bigger. There's way more abilities. There's way more characters that you can interact with. Most of the characters have like voice acting, even though they're not actual words that they're speaking. They're like a foreign language. So, but they do have distinct voices, which is pretty cool. And it just looks just as good, and if not better than that original game. Everything's hand drawn, and the animation is amazing. It's just like it was exactly what I wanted in a follow up to that game. Now, Lee, you also had this on your list.
Yeah.
What was it that made you want to put it on your list?
Well, I did really very, very much enjoy the first one. For me, the second one, the combat finally met the platforming and the traversal.
Mm-hmm.
It fleshed it out much more. There was something slightly unsatisfying. I kind of enjoyed it for what it was at the beginning, because there's quite a tough curve to the first Ori. So it kind of suited it maybe to be very basic, the combat. So you kind of can juggle the two. This one, where everything's much more refined within itself, much less of the platforming bullshit that was in there, like the weather jets into spiky wall bullshit. It kind of dulled that down a little bit, so that it gave them more of a chance to flesh out that combat and that kind of switching between your pals and that. Yeah, it just feels a lot more fleshed out than the first one. Much more fleshed out, and kind of it feels like it takes its time more in a constructive way, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like they had the budget that they wanted with the first game.
Yeah. This one breathes more.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot. Every area feels like it has a big has a flow to it that is almost like a full level as opposed to the first one, which everything felt a little truncated. All right, so staying in March, we have Doom Eternal, which is on Lee's list. Now, when we first talked about Doom, I was a little negative. Doom Eternal, I was a little negative on it. What is it about Doom Eternal, Lee, that really did it for you?
For me, I really kind of enjoy the thing that I didn't, because the first one is just a pure blast through. This one is kind of it makes you enjoy the micromanagement of the combat a lot more. It's a game that, because there's very much swapping, you're constantly switching your weapons out, constantly moving, and constantly kind of, there's no downtime on unless you're platforming. There's no down. Now I appreciate the platforming more because it does give you a lot more downtime. I just really enjoy that. I like a game that the game, because it kind of, I could leave it for a month or so and I can go back. I could feel like I've never played the game before. I just feel completely lost. But within about an hour, it's like I've never left it. It's so intuitive and muscle memory-ish that I just really, I do prefer it over the first one. And I did the previous one, and I don't think I was going to say that.
Yeah,
it can be brutal sometimes, but but I definitely went from a point where I went from hating running into a marauder to appreciate having a squad of marauders battle and stuff like that, and not even thinking about it, just turning your brain off, whilst not turning your brain off at all, and just kind of steaming through. It's kind of just really kept me firing on all of me gaming prowess, if I have any, if you will. No, I understand that the juggle is a bit much for someone. I understand that that's a wall. And it is a fair thing, but if you get it, I think you get it. And I got it, I think.
Yeah, that was my big turn off from it. Was like it was a little bit too much. Every enemy needed a very distinct way for you to kind of kill it, and if you weren't getting into that mode, you just weren't making any progress, because it more than the first one. Even it every encounter was basically a combat puzzle to solve, and you needed to execute it precisely, or you weren't able to get through it. And yeah, it was not as, you're going all over the place in this game, where the first game was linear, which I don't really have a preference there or anything like that. But yeah, it just was a little disappointing to me. But I know you enjoyed it, and there's a lot of people out there that do. So I guess we'll see what they do moving forward, whether they split the difference or keep going down this road.
Yeah, I've not played the DLCs yet.
From what I understand, they're pretty difficult.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, they're like everything cranked up to 11.
Yeah, when you have to fight the icons of sin and stuff like that. Spoilers. Fuck it, you're not going to get that far. You're not going to bother. But yeah, it's yeah, no, it does delve into, but yeah, It does feel like it finishes more definitively than the first one as well, because the first one just stops. I think if you ever finish the first one,
Yeah, it does kind
that
of
game just literally
end.
could go bump.
Yeah.
There's no real ending to that, so it's it's a lot more fleshed out. Yeah, it's my thing, I guess.
We'll get to more of your things later. All right, we're going into April here.
Excuse me?
Derek, we have Final Fantasy VII Remake. Talk to me about that game.
While I go make a cup of tea.
And wait for the second part to come out.
Oh, yeah. Jesus. How much tea am I going to be drinking?
A lot.
Yeah.
That's all right. Well, for me, Final Fantasy VII was like one of my favorite games of all time. And with the remake, they kind of reinvented it instead of just remaking it the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
With doing so and the way they took the approach to this one, making it more like of an action RPG versus that turn-based that we're used to from Final Fantasy. At least as far as like the classic entries go, they've been doing it kind of with 15 and all, experimenting with that, and it's been working out. But for this, it allowed it to tell at least for the beginning part of the game, like a deeper story where you could get and interact with the characters that you only spent like a very short time with. In the original game, we went from only having like 8 hours with a set of characters to expanding into a full game from start to finish with all these characters. And you got to see like a little bit more of their like family lives, their home lives, their backstories. And just with the full 3D graphics and the power of current gen consoles and stuff like that, it just brought a whole new life to the game. And then they were also able to like switch up and tell the story in a different way. But how this one ends, we're not sure like what they're going to do with it. But they've opened up that multiple personalities, multiple like realities, and different outcomes depending on choices that are being made.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see how they progress with the next parts of this that are going to come out, whether it be 2 more parts, 3 more parts, depending how they decide to do it. But I just really enjoyed it. I liked everything they did. It played well. It looked very nice, and it was just a great time from start to finish. Like, you really didn't if you were trying to learn more about these characters and get like a closer feel to the ones that you've known and liked, you were really able to do that with this, while still getting that Final Fantasy story.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. I know when it finally came out, it got a lot of positive reviews, let's say, from fans and just in general. So it's great that this thing that's been going on for so long finally did come out, and it's doing good. And
yeah,
I just wonder like, are they anywhere along with the second part or not?
I'm not sure because with this we kind of get like, here's a little bit of information and it's silent for a while. I just don't think now that they have the grounds for it, and kind of they have like they also said in like some of the interviews too, is like they have a better idea of where they want to go and how the story's being told. And since this had such a good reception, they can keep on with that same path they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they have started planning out the story for the next spot. So how far in they are to working on that, I couldn't really say.
Yeah.
But they definitely have that really good grounds for like how the game's going to play and what we should expect from like a next part.
Okay, cool. All right, so staying in April, we have Streets of Rage 4. Lee, you were anticipating this game, and it seemed to live up to your expectations. Is that an accurate thing to say?
Very accurate. You can't be messing around with kind of bringing back the old franchise anymore. I think that this nailed it more than I ever thought it would. It's a genre that obviously has its limits. The side scrolling brawler. We'll call it brawler if you like. Yeah, there we go. New genre. Yeah, I liked the the kind of the intricacy of it. It's more complex than you think it is once you actually get into the meat of it. Introduce stuff like screen juggle and stuff like that, screen corner juggle and stuff like that. Lots of different lots of unlocks to do. I'm still playing it now. I still dip back and unlock new stuff, and you just keep going and keep going. And once you start unlocking the old characters, which slot into the new gameplay kind of seamlessly, which is really weird because obviously this is much more of a complex type of fighting game than it used to, and they have the old style combat or moves and stuff. So it's cool to see that it still works, no matter who you use and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think the soundtrack will be. That's one of the things. That one of the hooks. I think everybody had. I don't think it is as good as the original 3. But that's the only real disappointment from that. I waited a long time for this. I've been waiting since the third one. Well, no, since the fourth one fell through. Back in the day, which was like the Saturn one fell through. And I feel like it was warranted to wait for it. It's kind of I don't know where you go from here. This is the thing. I don't know where you go from here. I think you just leave it there and say we put a lid on it. We put a cap on it.
Yeah, I guess unless you were decided to take it into a different direction, that because I guess you hit that nostalgia, right? The making it the way it used to be. Now, do you increment on it, or do you just, like you say, just put it to bed?
Yeah. Or you go a different direction, like they did with Double Dragon when they did Dragon Neon. They just completely turn it into a kind of an irony thing. That's the way you can do it, like they did with Battletoads recently.
Or
it didn't work quite as well.
Contra Rogue Ops.
Oh, that's my favourite. That was. I love that game, especially the JPEG graphics.
Yeah,
amazing.
Maybe they'll turn it into a third person something. I don't even know what to do with it. Anyway, yeah, that's good that lived up to the legacy of what Streets of Rage is. Don't have many of those types of games coming out these days. At least big profile ones like that. So now we're jumping into May. We only got one May game, and that's Minecraft Dungeons. And Derek, you played a substantial amount of that. What was so special about Minecraft Dungeons that kept bringing you back?
All right, well, for this one, I had absolutely no idea this game was coming out. I did not know it was a thing until it came out. And when you take Minecraft and smash it with like Diablo 3, you get a really great experience. I'm not some like crazy like Minecraft nut that'll sit there for like days, weeks, months, and years building stuff, but every now and then, the group will get together and we'll go into like a map, start a new seed, and kind of build and play and see what we can do, and then that's kind of it. And maybe a couple months we'll come back for that. But like with this one, as they had it set up as more like a Diablo type RPG, just in that Minecraft style.
Yeah.
It really hooked me in. Like I didn't think it was like I was coming home every day where we're hopping on and all right, next area, let's grind through this. Let's see what we can get. Let's see what kind of little gear sets we can get. And my son had it too, and he enjoyed it a lot. So we played it like between the Switch with him, and then we also had it on the PlayStation, and we played with our group of friends like that. It was just a lot of fun. You could play it by yourself. You could play it with a group. It just kind of like, it was one of those ones that really just caught you off guard of like how much it captured you in and how much fun it was for, being, a simpler game with not like as much lore as like Diablo or something would have, but still in that kind of same gameplay loop. So it was just a lot of fun. It was like a nice surprise out of nowhere.
Yeah, this
at
had
least
like
for me, cause
full cross play support, right? So everybody could play with each other.
Yeah, they just recently added that in, and it actually works out pretty well. Just like Minecraft, as long as you have your Minecraft account or the Microsoft account,
yeah,
with everything tied, then you can just hop on whatever system and see your friends. I did it between the PlayStation and the Switch with my son to try that out a little bit. And we connected right in, and it was no problem at all. So that feature was working really well.
Cool. Now, I played a little bit of this when it came out, and I really liked the visual style of it. Like, it's not like first-person Minecraft. It's like an isometric, like Diablo point of view, and I thought it looked really good. And yeah, it was, in terms of like the loot and combat and stuff, was definitely in that Diablo vein. I guess the only thing that I didn't was like wanted a little bit more out of was a little bit more Minecraft. Like there was like there's no building in it. You can't even really destroy the environment. I thought that would have been pretty cool if like they had bombs and explosions that like, you know, big chunks of the ground were blown up and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. I think one of the things I kept mentioning like while playing it too was that like if they could bring that combat style into Minecraft, I don't think I'd ever play anything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they'd probably have to change the camera, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
probably.
could go both ways, you know.
Yeah, I guess so. It'd be hard to
It's
do
kind of-
range stuff with first person
Yeah, that would be a little bit.
or like area of effect magic and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's see what they can do. Be
Yeah.
interesting. I'm sure there's probably a modder out there that's tried something.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they come up with because we know that Minecraft community is insane.
Yeah, and it's not going anywhere.
Nope. Yeah, so like I said, that made my top because it kind of like for me it came out of left field. We had no clues coming out, and I saw it and I looked into it and I was like, oh, this is cool, and it was only like $30 too. So we're like, let's try it. And we, like I said, we just got hooked, and then that was that.
Yep. All right, so that's going to wrap up May. Then we're going to go into June, which on June 16th, a game called Hard Space Shipbreaker came out into early access. And I played quite a bit of this game when it came out. Haven't really gone back to it since. They have been updating it, though, so it's not out of early access yet, but they are definitely plugging away at it. So what this was a game that, if you can imagine Isaac from Dead Space before he went on the fateful trip that turned into a monster hunt, what he would do in his daily life, which was kind of be a engineer with his plasma cutter that takes apart spaceships, and that's what the game was. You had these big spaceships that were in this like docking area, and you have to cut them apart with you have like a plasma cutter. You have a like a laser that heats up certain types of metals that will then detach chunks of the spaceship. You have like a grapple gun that can pull chunks of the spaceship off, and then you just kind of toss them into these these bins of depending on what material they are. And you have like a checklist of things that the contractor wants you to get out of the spaceship, like, you know, a special computer terminal, a certain amount of, you know, aluminum alloy, or, you know, get the valuable engine out of the ship without having it explode, stuff like that. And it's just kind of like it was a little bit meditative, a little bit like just kind of picking away at the ship and sending it into watching it slowly deteriorate kind of deal, which was pretty satisfying. It looks really good too. It was like really right from the start, really great looking game. And yeah, it was like a good time waster kind of game. Again, in the middle of the summer when I wasn't really doing a whole lot, it was nice to hop into this and kind of chill out for a little while.
Does sound like the most Ryan Shepherd game ever made.
It is. It's a very Ryan Shepherd game.
Take the things apart in the right order, and that's it.
Pretty much, yeah. Sometimes it's buildings. Sometimes it's taking apart. This one was taking apart. But yeah, they are adding stuff. Like they have these really really big ships now that I haven't even gone in and taken a look at. But it gets kind of it does get a little claustrophobic in these ships. Like you start to get ships where you have the interior and then the exterior, and then there's a section in between the interior wall and the exterior wall where you can sneak in and take some pieces off there. And if you get stuck in there without any oxygen, you'll die. So there is a little bit of stress that comes in there, but otherwise it's a pretty easygoing game.
Is that just PC?
Yeah, it's just PC. It's probably. I think they announced that it is going to come to console once it comes out of early access. So I've been playing with a controller, so it has pad support. So it'll probably come there at some point. It's first person, so I know I said like Dead Isaac and Dead Space, but it's like Isaac but in first person. Yeah, so if you're into those kinds of games on PC, that's a good one to check out. That's Hard Space Shipwrecker. And also in June, we had The Last of Us 2. Maybe you've heard of it.
Another indie.
Yeah, another early access indie game, small team. So Derek and Lee, you both have this on your lists. I don't know who wants to jump in first, but let's talk about it.
Derek?
All right, yeah, I can go. So I had this on my list because just from the overall story and experiencing gameplay, this was the first game that I've ever done a complete playthrough streaming to our community from the very start of the game to the very end. Like everything that was done with our community, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. And just, mainly because it was a completely different way of me playing a game versus, just sitting there and, okay, a couple hours here, a couple hours here. Nah, we had it every single night, an hour to two or so, going through it. And that was just a lot of fun for me, to be able to show off and talk to people and discuss different things that were going on as we were going through the game. But besides that, I thought it played well. Some of the changes and stuff they added into were really nice. They added in a lot so that people with different disabilities could try to enjoy the game and use these different features they've put out there. I think recently I'd watched a video more on it with different people using the different features that they had and how they interacted with the game, and a lot of it was pretty positive. So outside that, it was just, I enjoyed having another part of the story. There were some parts of it that I didn't like, but then as I played through and made it closer to the end, it kind of made sense why they did it. So it kind of grew on me a little bit, even though I didn't really like how they ended it.
Okay. Lee?
Well, considering I'm quite vocally, I'm not a fan of the first one. As much as I appreciate the story and the character work and stuff in the first one, I don't enjoy the gameplay at all. I didn't think this was going to be on my list, to be honest with you, before it came out. But it did so many things well. I jumped into it really because I wanted a kind of a big AAA survival horror type thing. They don't come around often. But this kind of, I like the complexity of the plot, or complexity of the characters rather than the plot. The subverting of expectation of how you expect characters to play out and how you expect the things to play out. I like all that, but the thing that really got me with this was the real kind of boost in combat and gameplay and stuff. It made it really satisfying grim but satisfying game to play. It's finally kind of the gameplay met the set pieces they design and stuff like that, and it was just a much more really satisfying. Maybe a little bit too long and bloated in places. Could have been done with a little bit of trimming here and there. But saying that, I don't know what you could have taken out. Maybe kind of the time jumps could have been better placed. But other than that, I thoroughly enjoyed it. As bleak of an experience as it sometimes was, it was a very nice, polished game to sit and play through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So that's going to wrap up May, and now we're going to go into June. We're going to go into July, and Derek, you have Death Stranding on your list, which I was surprised to see pop up.
Sorry.
I know that came out on PC. I don't know if that's where you played it or if you played it on PlayStation. Why is this on your list?
That might have been the reason, was that it became on PC. Because when I was going back to look through and make my list of the games, I just kind of pulled up a list of everything that came out this year.
Yeah.
And apparently the most complete one is hard as fuck to figure out if it was just like a new release of the game or whatnot.
Yeah. Okay, so you didn't actually play this year?
Yeah, so I think this was actually just... Oh yeah, because this was one of my honorable mentions as well. I did revisit it a little bit.
Okay.
So no, this ain't one of my real top ones here.
Okay.
But I dove back into it. It seemed to be a little bit more solid, since there's been some updates and patches applied to it and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, I went around exploring, kind of just like it was when it originally released.
Yeah.
Just there was more stuff around, like some people had different things built. Seemed to like
people are still in their building.
Yeah, there was some new, like some bigger, like I seen some like bigger like roadway pieces and stuff built like that we didn't see, that we kind of like knew we could build and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I proceeded on through a couple more of like the the kind of horror set piece zones where you had all the
BTs, the stealth.
Yeah, the BTs and everything. So I went through there, and it felt a little bit better going through there because I felt it felt like it was a little bit more tightened up than it was when it originally came out.
Yeah. So I did grab this on PC, so I could talk a little bit about that version of the game, which is pretty incredible, actually. The work they've done to port this over to PC is pretty incredible. It looks really good. I mean, the original PlayStation Pro version looked really great too. But this is can be running at a higher resolution. More bells and whistles turned on and stuff like that. The thing that really makes this a standout is NVIDIA's DLSS technology, which is actually allowing you to run the game at a higher resolution while it kind of runs like an AI protocol through it and upscales it to a higher resolution. So you get a really good frame rate while also getting a really good image quality. And that really makes the kind of... It's like, it's the environments in Death Stranding are like strange. They're sparse, but there's also a lot of terrain and stuff to look at, and I think it's actually kind of beautiful in a way, and it's kind of like post-apocalyptic, like no life, but also little bits of green, little trees here, little trees there, and like the water flowing and stuff like that. It's just this weird aesthetic that covers through the whole game, and it looks really great when you're cranking those visuals up. It's still the same batshit story. That hasn't changed, but that wouldn't change either. Yeah, I think if you do have a decent PC, that's the version you probably want to grab because it's they did a phenomenal job bringing that over to PC. All right, so staying in July and only a few days later, we have Ghost of Tsushima, which is on me and Derek's list. So I dove into this game pretty heavy when it first came out and put, dozens of hours into it and kind of I definitely kind of burned myself out going through that first region and doing everything. I kind of wish I had held off a little bit on ticking off every little thing down in that bottom region because it ends up unlocking the second region, which is just kind of more of the same. But that said, the way that this game manages to handle both stealth and open combat is, I think, really great. Usually you get a game and it does one or the other. This game, the stealth combat, it isn't really combat. You're just you're sneaking around very like Assassin's Creed style and taking enemies out silently. And then if you kind of raise the alarm, you go into very much like traditional samurai combat where the game makes you very powerful, but also if you're not paying attention and using your counters and dodging at the right time, you can get overwhelmed and taken out by too many enemies. So it just that was probably what stood out to me. And when I came back and revisited it briefly to make sure that it was going to end up being on my list, that was the first thing that ended up standing out to me. It was like within 10 minutes of booting that game back up, I had like a dozen soldiers dead at my feet. So it was like I didn't even like the muscle memory and remembering all the different stances and stuff stuck with me for probably like, I don't know, 5 months since I put it down and then picked it back up. So and the story is just really good too, like the little side stories and the overall story. There's some good characters there, some not great characters, but there's enough there that makes it worth plowing through some of these some of the side stories especially. Derek, why was this on your list? Same reasons or?
Yeah, pretty much the same reasons you had. For me, like any games where you get to choose if you want to do stealth or, just go in and raise hell. Usually it's the go in and raise hell for me. With this one, I found I enjoyed a lot more going in kind of stealthy, seeing who I could pick out, seeing who you could lead around and then take out. Sneak around, sneak under stuff, sneak in the windows. Like, it gave you a lot of different options to be stealthy. Where in some games they're like, yeah, it's stealth, but you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
This one's stealth, but you've got like, you can hide above. You can get them from above. You can jump through the windows. You can crawl underneath. You have the grass that you can sneak around in as well. And then you have your range to take out with your arrows and stuff. So, and it's also a beautiful looking game.
Yes, yeah.
That was one of the things that really stuck with me, and it came out of the gate in a really good state, which within the last year of gaming has kind of been a rocky subject in the gaming world. Is how stable of a game.
Yeah, for a big open world game to come out in a pretty good state, performance and like glitch and bug wise, it did come out pretty good.
And like you said, it was just a lot of fun with, taking out all the enemies, having your, like, what I enjoyed too is, like you mentioned, the different stances. So, you could go into that mode where you're just slashing away, but as long as you knew and, like, kind of paid attention to the enemies around, you could switch between, take care of them, roll out of the way a little bit. Everything just kind of flowed really nice and never seemed like an overall burden.
Yeah. Yep, it did. All right, so that's going to wrap up July. Now we're going to go into August, which is just dominated by me, I guess. So on the 18th of August, a game called Spiritfarer came out, and this is actually my number one game of the year. And this game is... I didn't talk about this previously on the podcast, so I'm going to take a little time to explain what it is. So this is a 2D indie game that came out. It came out on Game Pass. So if you got Game Pass, it's a fantastic game to jump into. But the concept here is you are the newly crowned Spiritfarer, which means you're the person that controls the boat that ferries the souls of the dead across the river Styx. And the whole game is based around you going around to various islands. There's like a big ocean that you sail around, and there are all these islands, and you're finding spirits that need to be ferried over to the underworld, basically. But it is a very upbeat, very colorful, very bright representation of all of this. Like, you're not some cloaked guy with a sickle. You're actually a human character looking person. And as you go along, you are also collecting resources and all sorts of different like ingredients for cooking and crafting things as well on these islands. And you kind of have to make the best of the situation for these spirits' last moments, so to speak. So they'll have like a favorite food that they like, so you'll want to cook them that food. They'll want a place to live on the boat, so you have to build them like their own little house and then upgrade it along the way. So that's where the crafting and the collecting of materials comes in. And you actually grow pretty attached to these characters because there's a lot of dialogue that goes on between you and them. You kind of find out their backstory, like why they have these last requests for you to go to these parts of the, I guess limbo is what you'd call it, like the space between the mortal realm and the underworld. And yeah, you just kind of grow attached to these characters. A lot of them you're actually related to, so you pick up like your uncle and your aunt and some other characters that have connections to you from the mortal realm. And yeah, it's just a really great expression of like dealing with loss, dealing with moving on, dealing with death, but it's presented in like a very kind of upbeat, kind of positive way, which is really goes a long way to make those kinds of topics manageable. And yeah, just like the music and the art and the writing all around it is really fantastic. It's a very long game, way longer than I originally thought it was going to be, because usually you throw on some of these indie games and they're pretty short experiences, and they have they kind of drive home their point, and then they throw up the credits and they're done. This is something else. I probably have put 30 to 40 hours into this game, and I'm not 100% done yet. I have like probably my last couple of spirits that I need to finish up with. I've explored the entire map and everything like that, so I know I'm almost done, but I'm still not 100% done with it. That's probably my only complaint about it is that there is a lot of busy work, a lot of going from island to island, a lot of crafting that some of the crafting is pretty simple. Other parts of it is kind of time consuming and a little bit just like tedious, and you kind of sometimes you have to craft a lot of parts. So it's got its shortcomings there, but the overall experience is just really, really fantastic. It's kind of like my Stardew Valley of this year in a lot of ways, where it's kind of like I just keep going back to it and plugging away a little bit more, getting a little bit more out of it, go on to something else, then I come back to Spiritfarer and plug away a little bit more and just get a little bit more out of it. So that's why it's on the top of my list this year. All right, and now we move on to The Last Campfire, which also came out in August, and this is the first game that Hello Games has put out since No Man's Sky, and this is a very small, like 3-hour long puzzle adventure game where you play as a little I forget what they call them now. Forlorn. That's what they call them. It's actually, you know what? It's a lot like Spiritfarer. You're in this kind of limbo space, navigating your way through the land of the living and the land of the dead. And here you're kind of solving puzzles in order to progress and find and guide other forlorn that have lost their way along the path to the underworld. And it has a very Alice in Wonderland vibe to it. We are coming across all of these like really bizarre characters, like larger than life characters. Like there's this gigantic pig that you have to feed different types of like you feed a television to, and yeah, like and other just weird things too, because they want something crunchy, they want something sparky, they want something this, they want something that, and yeah, just full of these little tiny vignettes like that, these little characters that stand out, and it's a incredibly beautiful game. Another like hand drawn. All the art is hand drawn, and you know, all the lighting and everything glowing and everything like that is really, really beautiful. And it just tells a kind of another simple story about like finding meaning in your time on your time on the planet, and whether or not you accept that for what it is, or you are disappointed with yourself at the end or something like that. So yeah, it's just, like I said, a short little 3-hour game. Some really neat puzzles, some really interesting characters, and yeah, apparently it was just like a small like 4-person team on that Hello Games team that put it together in a few years. So it's cool to see them like fostering that kind of development within their own ranks over there, while also building the biggest game, updating No Man's Sky here and there to make it just the biggest, craziest game out there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's those are my 2 for August. So now we're gonna go into September, which we kick it off with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake. Now Lee and myself, we had this on our lists. My obvious reason for this being on there is my reverence for the original games. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series is one of my all-time favorites. I just love the flow you can get into with those games with the simple combo system, and going as crazy with it as you want, and trying to string all those tricks together, getting all the special things on each level. And they just did such an amazing job with this game, updating the graphics, but not updating it too much. It still looks like has that look and feel of those original games, but looking a lot sharper and having a lot better lighting and effects and stuff like that. And they were able to also bring over the entire soundtracks from those games, which are a huge part of those original experiences. Lee, what's your takeaway? Why did this make it on your list?
Oh, well, what a treat this was. This was a real treat, this one. I've got the same reverence as you have, by the sense of it. I love those first few games. I like all of them, but those first 3 or 4 kind of have a real special point. And everything you said about what the gameplay and everything like that has been taken over, nostalgia stuff is fine. Now, it's been a funny old year. And by the time it's come out, it was August?
September.
September.
Very, very beginning of September.
Yeah. So you sit down and I played this, and I played the kind of nostalgia games throughout the year. The things that came out. This came out at exactly the right time, and it's exactly the thing I needed to just strip me out of 2020. I just thoroughly enjoyed this game and just sit there and just. It was like it was 1999 again or 2000 again.
Yeah.
It really honoured it, and it really kind of. I don't get really kind of touchy-feely emotional about games, but this kind of really made me feel good. This game at the right time, and I really needed it. So I got a lot of respect for this one. Really, really kind of give me a lift.
Yeah.
So yeah, loved it.
With the way we talked about it earlier, I was surprised that wasn't on Derek's list too.
Yeah, it probably should have been.
Maybe this instead of Death Stranding.
Yeah.
Me too.
I enjoyed it too. I just kind of, I don't know. I fell off playing it.
Oh, okay.
We played it a bunch when it was out, when we were talking about it, when we did the streams and stuff on it. I don't know what I started playing around that same time that took me away from it, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I plowed through that game and got everything I could out of it.
Yeah, because I wish I could remember what came out, because my brother had taken off a couple days to play that, because that's like one of his all-time favorites too, and I think he completely beat the first one, and then only made it partway through the second one.
All right, so stick it in September. We've got Mafia Definitive Edition on Lee's list, which we talked about not too long ago. You want to kind of do a once-over about why that game stuck out to you, Lee?
Yeah, well, it really kind of, after the particularly stinky definitive version of 2,
Yeah.
I did go into this maybe with slightly lower expectations. Well, I screwed that one up. What are they going to do with this one? It kind of, if you loved the first one, it kind of really busts it to a high sheen. It's more of a remake than a definitive edition. Newly redone story, kind of done over voice acting, cutscenes. One of the best. I think it's one of the best stories in this sort of genre, this kind of open world genre. Gameplay, maybe, although it might be the most kind of innovative third-person open world game, it feels nice and chunky in a kind of a gangster way. Just really nicely done. Kind of. Hopefully they, after kind of the rather disappointing 3, hopefully they can restart the series again, and take. Although it's an older game, take some more of this and kind of implement it into that, and not get bogged down with what kind of dragged down the later ones.
Yeah.
Good stuff. This one, very well done, especially on the story side.
All right.
If you want a good story, this is definitely one to dip into.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah, I haven't gone and checked it out yet, but I will probably will at some point when I've got a chunk of time to devote to it.
Mm.
So that's gonna wrap up September. Now we're gonna go all the way through October to the very end with what I guess technically qualifies as our game of the year because it appeared on all three of our lists,
Wait,
and
that
that's
can't be
Watch
right.
Dogs Legion.
Can we have a callback on this? We can't make this the best one of the year. It was
This is
good.
this is the one that's on all three of our lists, so technically
And
it's our Voxel Viewpoint's game of the year. Doesn't
yay!
necessarily mean it's the best. It just means it's among the three of us the game that we all put on our lists.
Oh, Watchdog Legion, you go, girl. What,
So
what
yeah,
a world.
this was like the first of I guess the kickoff for the holiday season, and one of two big giant open world games that Ubisoft put out this holiday season. And yeah, this was the third Watch Dogs game. So you've got your gadgets to hack things and steal people's information and hack into security cameras and monitor things and steal people's cars and all that stuff. But what really set this game apart was the hacking of the people just walking down the street was expanded a little bit by the ability to actually recruit them as a possible part of your legion, part of your DedSec group, but also the ability to play as them in the game. And, some of these characters would come with their own unique talents and perks and abilities that would help you in certain situations. I think I remember when we talked about it, Derek and I kind of had a little bit of a lesser experience with this because we had the Ultimate Editions, which gave you some pretty high level characters right out of the gate. So the necessity to go and try and recruit some people with special talents wasn't as necessary for us. But we did end up still having a good time with it. I still had a good time with it. I think it was a really great open world that they made. They made it like the oppressed streets of London. They felt legitimate. They felt real. And the story had, in my opinion anyway, some tonal shifts that I didn't really agree with completely, but overall I thought it was a pretty good story. I guess I'll let you guys talk a little bit about it. Lee, I think you had it pretty high on your list, so why don't you kick off with what your favorite parts of this game was?
Yeah, I did enjoy that one. It does help that kind of it's set, it's in my kind of vicinity of the world, my manor, if you will. If we're gonna,
Yeah, you're in this game.
Stupid
Just
London
say it.
thing.
Just say it, Lee. You're in this game.
I'm in it. I'm
Yeah.
in it. I've got a glowing crown. It's brilliant.
Yeah, like behind your head. It's weird, but especially for stealth.
Yeah, really glowing, really beaming. But I think the thing that I liked most about this, for all the things it does new, and there was some quite cool things they did with the recruitment stuff. This feels like it's taken this subgenre, this open world subgenre, right back to kind of early days of GTA or mid days of GTA. It just kind of it's lost a lot of the fat that seems to be on the more recent ones, like your more bloated open world urban games, if you will. What was that? I like that it's taken it back to kind of a simpler type, a more fun time, maybe a little less realistic. Zooming around on like floating floors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just it was actually a little twitch twist that just takes a lot of the maybe the more serious edge of how they treat these games now. Just makes it a little bit more anarchic and inventive. They finally got it. Watchdog's finally got the idea of how it is. If they can make the story meet in the middle a little bit more, maybe. But I don't think the story is I didn't really care about the story when I was having fun just messing around in the city, taking it any way I wanted to. So, no, I did like this one.
Yeah, I guess that was probably the big split here, is that if you focused on the story, the story was the story, but it didn't really make a whole lot of sense in the hijinks you were doing outside of the story. You're just, because you could just kind of really, really just screw around in this game. And not really have too many repercussions, because it's pretty easy to get away from the cops and stuff like that. Yeah, Derek, what would you like to add?
I enjoyed about how much we got yelled at by Lee for talking about the Ferris wheel.
Get fucked.
The big Ferris wheel.
Yep.
That was a cool mission when you had to defend the big Ferris wheel.
The big Ferris wheel. Yeah.
Yep.
Really big, isn't it, that Ferris wheel? Yeah.
It's a very big Ferris wheel. It's right there in the middle. It's right there in the middle of the city, too.
Yeah.
Don't fuck with me.
Lovely, Lee. Well, okay, so out of all seriousness, it was a lot of fun to play. You guys described, we could go in and do different things. There's plenty of different approaches you could take to doing these different missions. Yeah, I kind of ended up using the same couple people because of having that Ultimate Edition of the game. So at some point I might do another playthrough again and not use those people at all and kind of see how it is. But I had a ton of fun just going around trying to do the missions. As I mentioned, I was always flying around on a cargo drone trying to see what missions I could fully do, solely on that.
Yeah.
I don't think I hardly ever used the vehicle. I would just hop into there and just fly everywhere, see where I could drop into, as you were going places. Some of the small little mini events, you could just stand on there, switch to your regular mode where you're not controlling that, shoot a couple stealth shots down there, take out your guy, and be on your way.
That's the kind of stuff that's kind of goes against the oppressive nature of the story, where you can just kind of do that and have nothing happen to you.
Yeah. And the other thing too was this was the first game I played between generations. I played the PlayStation 4 version about halfway through, and then for the second half of the game till the end, I had played it on the PlayStation 5. You could see the difference between the two. They both handled really well. The PlayStation 5 version looked great with all the extra effects that it had, bringing it closer to that PC type of look that you'd get from a game. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun to play. It could be nutty at times, it could be serious. You could kind of just do whatever you want. The system that they had in place for the recruitment and the game remembering decisions you made or who you took out or who you didn't and how it'll affect you later on, or one of your people might get nabbed because of a decision you made. I thought that was really cool, and it worked out well in the game. It was pretty impressive on the execution of the new things they were trying.
Yeah, I think it was overall a pretty solid game, and apparently our game of the year.
What the hell?
Big upset. I thought for sure it was going to be Bug Snacks.
Oh, it gets worse. You know what? I thought on the list that said Rugrats, and I was hoping it was that. I just tried to block Bug Snacks out.
No, it says Bug Snacks. So yes, we're gone into November here, so we're in the twilight of 2020, and this game I added to my list here, kind of at the end. Bug Snacks, and this game I had played when it first came out, and I did a little stream on it, and I enjoyed it enough. But I didn't go back to it until actually this past week, because I wanted to revisit it for I I revisited a couple games here to see if they would come up on my list. And this game climbed the ranks pretty quickly. So this is it has elements of, say, like Pokemon Snap, where you're taking pictures of these creatures called bug snacks, and they all have different kinds of attributes. They are all based on different kinds of food, so like French fries and hamburgers, hot dogs, candy and ice cream, all sorts of different stuff, and they all have goofy, silly names that are associated with those foods. But unlike Pokemon Snap, you're then also tasked with catching these bugs. And that's where most of the gameplay comes in, trying to figure out how to use all of your different traps and lures to actually capture these bugs. And ultimately, what you end up doing is usually feeding them to one of the other characters on this island you're on. And as you feed them these bug snacks, they transform the character's limbs and facial features into the elements of the bug snack. So you'll feed them a Strabby, which is like a strawberry with legs, and their hand will turn into a giant strawberry. And that's kind of like I said, the gameplay of the game. The story of the game is actually where the game started really hitting for me, which is so there's like this mystery of the island that you're trying to figure out. You're trying to find somebody on this island, and in doing so, you have to interview and help out all of these characters that are on the island. And they all start out as kind of like caricatures of types of characters. Like you have the big buff bro dude guy that is always lifting weights and talking about how big his muscles are and stuff like that. You have the washed up singer songwriter that is trying to get her second big hit written, but is having a hard time doing it. And like I said, they start out as characters, but as you actually start doing things for them and start talking to them more and listening to their problems, why they came to the island, what they were trying to escape, what they hope to find, you actually start to find that they're like a little bit more deeper than that. Like the dude bro guy is like an actual legitimate cares for his his best friend, and is just trying to do the best he can with kind of the limited skill set that he has, because he's not exactly like the smartest person in the world, and is kind of dealing with the hand that he was dealt. And it's just little things like that help to kind of separate it a little bit from the silliness of the gameplay and the puzzles and the actual bug snacks, and kind of ground it a little bit in some actual real character building and stuff like that. I think if you can get past the kind of dad humor, puns, and turns of phrase, and just kind of goofy, silly names that everything has, if you can get past that, I think there's kind of a fun narrative puzzle game to have here, because some of the snacks, they do a good job of making you use your whole arsenal of traps and snares and stuff like that to figure out how to capture some of these more elusive bug snacks. And yeah, I haven't quite finished it yet. It's another one where I'm like right at the very end, and I just have this feeling that it's going to wrap up pretty good, because the whole thing has been about this mystery of that you're trying to solve and unravel. And I think based on the writing so far and how they've kind of built out the world and stuff like that, I think it's probably going to have a pretty good ending. But yeah, I kind of dove into this and just kind of played it nonstop for a couple of days because that's how much it grabbed me. So, so Lee,
I can't lie. You've just explained that, and it sounds like so you eat bits of creatures and then they appear on your body.
I don't.
Right.
You catch them and you feed them to the other characters on the island.
And then they take on the appearance of bits of their body of the. What
Of the-
nightmare fuel have you been playing? What body horror? It sounds like Pixar, directed by David Cronenberg.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, that's a pretty accurate description of it.
10 out of 10, game of the year. Jesus
No,
Christ.
I mean it's definitely played as, hey, this is kind of weird and messed up. It isn't like,
It doesn't sugarcoat it.
what's that?
It doesn't sugarcoat it. It's like, yeah, this is what it is.
Yeah, no, it's like, yeah, this is what they're doing, and it's weird and it's messed up, and it's probably not going to end well, but here we are.
It's giving me night sweats just thinking about it. Can we move on?
Sure. On the same day, apparently, Spider-Man Miles Morales came out. Yeah, because that would have been the day the PlayStation 5 came out.
Yeah, release day, yeah.
Because Bugsnax was a launch title as well. Maybe not quite as popular as Miles Morales, but maybe it should have been. Do you eat anything in Miles Morales that transforms your body into something else? No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think. Well, yeah, you're right. What was I thinking? Well, that swayed me.
So Lee, you had this on your list. What was it about Miles Morales that stood out and it made you want to put it on your top list?
Took all the things out of the original one, which was fun but a little bit bloated, a little bit stretched out, a little bit of lot of filler within the side stuff. Condensed it, shrunk it down. This is kind of a maxi expansion, I guess. It's quite big. It's not quite DLC, but it's not quite a full game. But it did just condense it down without affecting the story too much. And the characters too much. You didn't feel they was condensed. Just made it a tighter experience. The combat was upped nicely, with a little bit kind of extra power and stuff. So it took the repetition out of that. Just a really well crafted game. Really, really well kind of implemented on the PS4, considering it looks like it's kind of been beefed up for PS5. I don't feel like I've missed out on much by playing it on PS4. But yeah, it's just a slicker, kind of tighter experience. If you like the first one, then this is kind of tickle your pickle. I don't know what that means. But it's out there now.
Did you eat a bug snack over there?
That's not a pickle, but yeah,
there's a pickle bug snack. Don't tell me.
I wonder where that'll appear.
Your nose.
Jesus Christ! Yeah, yes, my nose.
Yeah.
Yes. Fucking hell, the wheels have come off again.
All right. So, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Every year and it falls apart.
Miles Morales.
Yeah, it's all right.
All right, cool. Also in November we had Assassin's Creed Valhalla that came out.
This fucking thing.
Me and Derek had it on our list, and we kind of just recently talked about that. So I'll just go over it a little bit. This is, I think, probably the best the series has been in the last probably 3 entries. This is like the end of their trilogy, where they have kind of reworked the formula, quite a bit from the previous games. And yeah, you're just a Viking sailing around and kind of pillaging medieval or Dark Ages England. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful game. They nail the Viking look and feeling of like, coming from Scandinavia over to, this lush green, colorful, shores of England. And yeah, Ivar, the main character, he or she's story is pretty interesting. You're kind of like going in and out of these bigger story beats where you're not really the main person here. You're more of like the pulling strings in the shadows while somebody else ends up like on the throne of a kingdom, and stuff like that. So yeah, I certainly haven't completed it yet. It's a very long game, but I look forward to, really diving in and cleaning it out here and there along the way, because that's usually how I play these latest Assassin's Creed games, because they are big and you can kind of get a chunk of story out of them in a few hours, and then take a break and then come back and get another big chunk of story out of it. They're kind of paced really well that way. You have anything you want to add there, Derek?
You pretty much nailed it. I just enjoyed the fact that I could come into this one. Yeah, it's an Assassin's Creed game, but it doesn't penalize you as much as the other ones have for not going full stealth all the time. Like, I can play like a Viking. I can go in there and fuck some people up, or I can go in kind of stealth and do my thing that way too. And it's kind of balanced pretty well. I just like you said, it's a beautiful game. The environments are amazing. Again, this is another one that I started playing on the PlayStation 4 for release, so I could do that stream out for everybody. And then, I think a couple days later, switched over to the PlayStation 5 version. And it just played really well. Pretty solid package out of the gate. And yeah, it actually has me enjoying like Assassin's Creed again, because I skipped the last one because I really just don't care about Rome. But I did play Origins, and I liked the direction they're heading. And then, like you said, I think they just kind of like fine-tuned where they wanted it to be in this one.
Yeah, Odyssey was it was an odyssey. it was massive, and it never felt like it had a grounding to it. But this has like a base that you're building out, as well as being very big too. So you can get a lot of game for your buck, let's say.
You definitely feel more like invested in the game, as far as just playing it through to get the story.
Yeah. All right. So here at the end of November, you, Derek, also have World of Warcraft Shadowlands. Do you want to dive into that and talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. So as we know, everybody knows World of Warcraft. But the reason Shadowlands hit my list is because it's their newest expansion, and each expansion that's come to this game is like a full game's worth of content, if not more, and last a very decent amount of time between updates and seasons, and slowly adding in more story and events to it. This kind of like with this coming out, it brought me back to playing World of Warcraft. Whereas the past couple, I kind of just dove in, got the story, and then I was done with it. But this had me back. I have a group of friends that plays it. We were on like every single day, getting ready for it. As soon as it released, we were all on as much as we could, and it was a lot of fun because they also revamped the leveling system. So instead of going from being a level 120 to now, all right, you're going to be a level 130. They're going to do their thing where they just keep adding 10 levels each time. They reworked the whole system and brought you back down to level 50 before they started. So the new grind for leveling was 50 to 60. And they did a really good job implementing it and reworking everything. And it was just a lot of fun to come back to this, to be leveling, to we're on a PvP server, so we have war mode on, so we were killing the horde for alliance this time around, and it was just a lot of fun, questing again, killing the horde, just sitting around doing that, or going out to help people. And also the story with this one was more immersive than it's been before. There was a lot more talking with characters, a lot more cutscenes, and you're a lot more involved in what is going on. So it was just a really nice return to the series.
All right, cool. So we're gonna kick off December with Lee and John Wick Hex, which he hasn't talked about yet on the cast. So what was so special about this game that you had to get it on your list, Lee?
Just kind of it subverted expectations from. I like licensed stuff anyway, but kind of Lionsgate are doing interesting things. Sometimes they don't always work. They're doing interesting things with their licenses where they try and kind of go a little bit further than your usual kind of. Oh, this is a license thing. We'll just do a genre thing. This is kind of on the surface, it looks a little kind of XCOM-y, but it's kind of more like kind of isometric. It's more like kind of combat chess. This is a very strange game. So obviously you're the titular John Hex.
John Wick.
John Wick, indeed. I'm thinking Jonah Hex.
Yeah.
Another character.
Different game,
Jesus
different
Christ.
character.
I so don't want a Jonah Hex game.
No.
And so it works on a kind of a hex system, not quite grid based, hex based. So kind of 4 to 6 points. And as I say, although it looks more like an XCOM, it's more like an isometric super hot. The way you do your moves is based along. Imagine you have a move to take a certain amount of time, and your moves move along the bar at the top of the screen, almost like video editing software. So you have a certain amount of chunk to do your moves, make your plans in, and they move as you're moving with it. So kind of, it's not turn-based at all. They play while you play. And it's got a really good juggle of combat. It keeps you on your toes a lot. It has a strange fog of war type thing, so you can only see certain amounts of the screen at any one time until you're in that point. So it's very difficult. You need to be really in the moment. It works with the concept of do you know John Wick films?
Yeah, he's like the mass murderer.
Yeah, he is a mass murderer, but kind of, it's not. It's kind of, it works on the idea that he's always 3 moves ahead of everybody else, much like rather than it's kind of, it'd be easier to do his game as like a combo type game, like a Bayonetta type game or something like that, maybe, where it's just like, oh, look at him, but it's kind of, it's that planning ahead, even to the point where you can do takedowns and you could drop the people in a certain space within your hex. To make sure, but you also got to bear in mind of what's coming at certain other angles from you, because if you're dropping it on one side, it gives you a disadvantage. So it's really granular with kind of what you do. It's not just simple as point at the guy and shoot.
Yeah,
it's not as easy. It's not as simple as that. It's quite complex and interesting.
The comparison to Super Hot was what I got out of this when I saw like videos of it and stuff like that. Except this is like a isometric top-down view. And like you said, even though you move, so is everybody else. So you can predict where they're going to be to a certain extent, but you don't know 100% until, they may shoot or they may throw something at you, and then you have a little bit of time to react to that, but not as much time as you had when, say, they were all the way across the room and you were trying to set up your move or whatever.
There's a read in the room as well, because you can throw your gun like a projectile to kind of stun them, and obviously making sure there's drop weapons around you can roll in. But it's a really cool juggle. Like Like I say, it's not perfect because they do a playback thing, so you can feel like the badass John Wick that you are. But it's very choppy because it kind of starts when you stop and started in your moves. So it doesn't flow like you want it to. So you feel more like a badass when you're playing than you do when you're watching the playback of you being a badass. So that's a little bit unfortunate. I wish they could have tightened that up, but there's something really satisfying about it and just kind of eminently replayable between, over the levels again, trying to refine that and get more stylish with the way you do it. It's always interesting because the AI is pretty good, to be honest, but if you're not careful, they will absolutely decimate you, and it's not not exactly past. They can definitely plan around you. So it's a really cool little juggle. It's just a really fun little thing at the end of the year that I really got into. Probably on the lower end of my top 10, but it's definitely piqued my interest more than a lot of the licensed stuff this year.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Beep.
Speaking of licensed stuff this year.
Jesus. We'll get there.
All right. So, here we are at the end of 2020, and we're wrapping it up with the game of the year 2020. Like, not the game of the year specifically, but the game that dominated the year, at least in conversation, and that's Cyberpunk 2077. And Derek and Lee, you both had this on your list, and we haven't covered this game yet, so we're going to take a little bit of time to, dive into it. This is also appearing on my most disappointing list, so I'm going to add my little bit into it here as well, and just kind of chunk it all into one Cyberpunk talk. And I guess I'll let you start because it was your number one on your list. Tell me about the Cyberpunk. Why is it number one on your list?
It just hooked me, this one. I have obviously we understand what's happened. We don't need to go over it. We've kind of dodged one like bullet time in the Matrix, but we know what's gone on. I played it on a relatively stable experience, so I played it on a Series X. I didn't have any crashes. I had the occasional funky T-pose. Mostly, I didn't have my immersion broken. I got a game that it's not much different, I guess, in a weird way from how Bethesda would do a game like this. It's like it doesn't reinvent the wheel, but then I didn't expect it to, because essentially it's kind of 8 years old. It was never going to reinvent. It wasn't never going to redefine how to do these sort of games in 2020 when the core is fairly old. So you're going to get a certain experience. I knew I was going to get a certain experience going in, and I got it. Really, I like spending time in it. I love the story. The story is superb. The acting, it's super. The whole thing about it. When you're doing the RPG talking stuff, it feels more alive than most of the things that are around these days. Kind of when you're interacting, it's just well performed. I like the combat loop. That really opens up nicely. At first, I found it quite stiff, the combat in this. But once you get into the granular nature of the upgrades, and you can just really tinker with the gunplay and stuff like that, and the melee is probably a little bit weaker. But once I started really tinkering with the gunplay and getting into the sub menus of how you mess about with that, I just really got into it. I just really got into the atmosphere. I like spending time in the city. I feel like you can smell the city. I just like spending time there. I know you can't engage with people as much as you would like to as NPCs on the street, but it still feels alive the way they mill around. I mean, I probably wouldn't talk to people in the street anyway because I'm an antisocial fucker. But the way they interact, and you see them interacting in their little corners, it just makes it feel buzzing, like I've not felt in games like this before. To be fair, kind of because it's always stiff. It may be a Fallout or a the Skyrim or something like that, something of that level. I love cyberpunk stuff. I'm a real big William Gibson fan, and this gave me what I wanted. Doesn't reinvent the wheel, but I just had such fun in this. I've not finished it yet. I'm looking forward to going through in the other two classes, and I'm probably going to do that as soon as I finish it, to be honest with you. But no, I just really dug this one.
Mm-hmm. All right, Derek, what would you like to say?
Okay, the kind of add on with I think Lee hit a lot of things on the point. Like, we knew what we were coming into. We knew what kind of experience we were going to have. Aside from all the controversial parts of it, again, I had a pretty good experience with the game as well. I had maybe 2 crashes playing it on the PlayStation 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one of the glitches happen where a quest wouldn't proceed because the character got stuck somewhere, but all I did was reload, and their quick save system kind of is pretty close to where you're at, so I didn't lose out on much. But at the same time, being able to go back through that same area a second time had me play it completely different than I did the first time, and I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, it's been a fun experience. Like, it hooked me. I've been playing it a lot. I've been doing a lot of the side stuff. Like, I've barely scratched the main story. I'm maybe about halfway on that, but I've got a couple sectors cleared out completely. I've done a ton of stuff out in the Badlands. I've been collecting weapons and stuff like that. We actually had a stream where I got the bike that's based after the one from the anime Akira.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And that was pretty cool too, because we actually got it right away. So we had a bunch of time on stream just to screw around and see what it was like driving around on that. Because I think personally the motorcycles handle the best in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd probably say my one gripe about it would be the car handling. They're just very, very loose and squirrely.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very satisfying in first person either. It feels
No.
like the other side of your car, the passenger side of your car, it feels about 5 foot wide.
Mm-hmm.
It feels way too wide, and it just doesn't feel satisfying at all when you're in first person. Third person is not so bad. Yeah.
And then
But bikes are.
yeah. And then with that as well, it's a game based off a tabletop RPG. That's where the basis of it comes from. That's where a lot of the stories that are being told and the characters like Johnny Silverhands and all come from. They're all written out in that kind of, it's cyberpunk, but it's in that D&D role-playing dice style game. So it's really cool to see that brought to life. And I thought they did a really good job, because we figured that it would be that kind of, Bethesda style type Fallout-ish feel to the game. But they took out the survival elements. Like, you don't need to be eating or relying on water in this. So it just made it a lot more enjoyable to play that kind of experience without having to worry about those things. And it's a fun world to be in. A lot of the side stories are a lot of fun. The characters you meet that are fully scripted. And there's even been some zany things. I picked up a fucking gun that talks to you, and it had its own little story. And
Does Fallout need water and food?
You need to keep your reds down. Yeah.
Yeah.
it was the rads and stuff like that. But the survival, the hardcore survival aspects of that were kind of taken out.
Did it stick closely to the tabletop lore stuff? Did it kind of nail that?
From the little bits I've been seeing, because I've been really trying to get a hold of the actual book that it's based on. But ever since it was announced, the prices of it have skyrocketed. I've seen it for as much as $150.
Jesus Christ.
When those type of books normally go for 20 to 40, depending on how much content's in them. But from what I've heard, the story's been close, and it was interesting to see how they'd bring it to life, and then how they'll be able to expand it, because on the flip side of that, tabletop RPGs are set up to where we can also expand on those stories in our own way.
Maybe get a reprint. Hopefully the page doesn't fall out and people ask for a refund. But
yeah, so the Cyberpunk tabletop game is Cyberpunk 2020. So we're like, and the game deals with that. So it's more of a story-wise, it's more of a continuation of that story rather than like a retelling of it or something like that. So this is like 80 years forward, right? Or 50 years, 57.
years,
yeah. 57 years forward. And there's a lot of references to that, and like, Victor at the beginning talking about how old he is, and references to how long ago Johnny Silverhands, was his crazy self and stuff like that. And so yeah, in terms of like, it's like, at least as far as I know from the little bits of that original story, it just kind of is a continuation of a lot of what like the characters and the narrative beats of that 2020 world. And that is kind of like, it's kind of specifically in that aspect, is kind of like a mixed bag for me, because I feel like they didn't really, in my opinion, didn't go far enough in like the future tech stuff. It feels like, we're dealing with a world that has some cool future stuff, but a lot of it doesn't feel like it's too far ahead of what we like have today. Obviously there's like the neon signs and everything looks different, but it's based in a lore in a world that was written back in the early 1980s. So the idea of even like a cell phone or a smartphone in that world isn't really wasn't really something that was considered. So I don't know, I just felt like a lot of the tech that was presented in that didn't really feel like it was 2077. It felt more like it was like maybe 2030 or 2037 or something like that, like not super forward in tech and stuff like that.
So what you're saying is you think dildo technology would be much more advanced by 2077?
Probably. I mean, people talking about dildos, and I didn't find too many dildos in the game.
They're everywhere.
I haven't.
They are.
I just haven't noticed them. I don't know. They're like, I've seen them in like where they're supposed to be. Like there was like the sex shops and you go to this place where you live out your fantasies and stuff like that. They were there and stuff like that, but I haven't noticed them in like places where they shouldn't be, I guess I should say.
You'll find them next to a carton of milk. Normally, they're just sitting on the floor. They sit behind a dumpster. They sit, on the pavement. And, yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't. What I am noticing is how many of those little lore things that are those story things, that those little chips you pull out and don't read, because
I read
there's
those one day.
there's like 5 of them in every room, and each one's like 3 pages long, and it's like, what the fuck? What a waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. As far as from my perspective in terms of glitches and stuff like that, I have come across a lot of them in my time, and I've been playing on PC. And they range from like the T-posing and just like animations not like glitching out, and physics kind of getting wonky, which isn't too bad. But there have been other ones where like I grab a guy to do a stealth kill and like he disappears, but the game still registers that I've got my hands around his neck, so I'm like moving around and he's moving around with me, but I can't really see the body because it's like flickering in and out of my view. And like when you're trying to do stealth and shit like that, that's fucked up. You're not gonna that's gonna end up being a once it finally clears itself up, I just ended up having to shoot him because he obviously knew I was there.
Yeah.
And it seems like, I shared that video of Pan Am where she shot her. This was a story mission. Shot the rocket, and she didn't have the rocket launcher in her hand. It just came out of thin. Like the rocket launched out of thin air, and then when she got back into the car, the rocket launcher then appeared. So like it was like reversed, and where it was supposed to be, the asset was supposed to load in. So she was driving with this giant rocket launcher as an arm, basically. So there's stuff like that. That is
Here's a treat for you. I have one. The one I did have was in an interactive cutscene. It's the last scene you see Jackie. So without spoilers, you sort of know what that means. And he's sitting in the car and he tries to take a chip out the back of his head.
Yeah.
But he's holding his gun when he does it, and the model of the gun gets stuck inside Jackie's head. And then stays there as he takes the chip out. So kind of I'm looking at this emotional scene of him with this kind of
gun stuck in his
the
head.
handle of a gun, yeah, and the other, like the barrel sticking out of his other ear as he gently ebbs away into nothingness.
I think that's I think that's also an advertisement in the game.
For
Shooting yourself in the head, because there's one for that in the game.
Oh,
like a billboard.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty immersion breaking, but yeah,
and that's what those bigger glitches are really a problem for me when they happen, especially in the story sequences.
yeah,
Open world stuff is open world stuff. It is what it is, but when you have basically scripted cutscenes where these issues are happening, that it starts to kind of wear thin. And those are the ones I just remember. There's definitely just silly moments where like a character is supposed to sit down and they like slowly rise up from the seat as they're sitting, physics shit like that.
yeah.
I had my car fly in when I summoned it.
Well, that's pretty convenient because sometimes the car gets stuck behind like 300 cars of traffic.
Oh, that happens to me.
Have you had it where like your car's like when you go to buy a car, it's like sitting kind of in the ground, like you see the tires below like the pavement, and then when you buy it, it just kind of like pops up to where it should be.
Yeah, I saw you share that picture. No, I don't think I've actually bought a car like that in the game.
No.
The only ones I have are the ones that have been given to me. But eventually I will, I'm sure. And I'll check that out, see if it's like, yeah, because like it looked like it was on cinder blocks.
Yeah.
and then it popped up. Yeah, so I guess on top of the glitches and stuff, which, obviously a lot of that's going to be eventually patched out. It would have been nice to have it not launch like that, but that it is what it is at this point. I guess to kind of talk about what Lee had talked about, where it was he did his comparisons to Fallout, and that it feels like an older game, and I guess that's probably my biggest disappointment, being the follow-up to The Witcher 3 that this is, because The Witcher 3 like kind of reinvented open worlds for the last open world RPGs for the last 5 years or so. The Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which we had talked about, is very much has very much been following in those footsteps created by The Witcher 3 since that game came out. And to have this come out and like really right from the gate feel like one of those Bethesda RPGs, in terms of like the way you interact with characters, the way you level up even and choose your Like, I mean, it literally start. Which I know this is just a general RPG thing, but the way it starts with, they pretty much could have just called that the special skills that you select at the beginning of that game. They're in character creator. That's how much that felt like that, and even the character creator, I didn't think was that great. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of options there to really create a character that looks like looks unique. You know, it was all just like preset faces and hair and stuff like that. Yeah, and then like the structure of it, of like, you have your main quests and your side quests, and they don't really, they rarely interact with each other. It doesn't feel like this world kind of like meshes with, like, everything feels very separate and discrete, as opposed to meshing with each other. So like, you go and you kill a bunch of Tiger Claws people, but then the head of the Tiger Claws, that woman, that old woman, will just be like, hey, how you doing, what's going on? Like, you didn't just kill a whole bunch of her cronies, you know what I mean? And then Lee, when you were talking about, not being able to interact with people on the street and stuff like that, that's fine. Like, I don't really need that if it's not going to be something elaborate, like some sort of like, I'm going to get a quest from them, or is going to be some sort of extended conversation. But why even put in the prompt then?
Yeah.
Like why even have it come up like press X or press A to talk to this person, if all it's going to be is a canned, like, hey, or get out of my way, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong there. I think I just appreciate the texture of it more than I did kind of. But yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And then probably the last thing I'll say is, back to my little comment about Derek and his car flying in. The vehicles in the NPC vehicles in this game have no pathing to them. And what I mean by that is, if you park your car in the middle of the street, you're going to get a never-ending line of cars lined up behind you. They're never going to drive around your car. They're just going to keep lining up forever. It's because there's no AI on the car. They just have a set path, and if there's something in front of them, they stop, and they never do anything. Like, this is something that's been in like Grand Theft Auto since probably Vice City or San Andreas, where the cars will react to what you're doing in the middle of the street. They'll drive around your parked car. They'll honk their horn. They'll do all sorts of different kinds of stuff. They'll go crazy and drive up onto the sidewalk and blow past you if you pull out a gun or something like that. And that's just not here in this game. And it's obviously something that will maybe get added in later, but it's kind of like, when you're walking around that street, when you're walking around those streets and the people are just kind of walking in a straight line, not really paying attention to you. Same thing with the cars. Like, if I go up to a food vendor not actually a vendor, but somebody who's sitting in front of, he's cooking something on a barrel on the sidewalk, and I talk to him, he doesn't say anything different other than what the other characters say. So it doesn't really feel like there's no point in him having that food in front of him and stuff like that. It just feels like a very sterile world that doesn't really have too much interaction in it, besides the points of interest that are added to your map as you go along.
I've got to admit, there's something that is disappointing, where you talked about the AI in the cars. But all of those cool-looking car combat sequences almost completely canned. That's disappointing. I don't feel like I got much interactivity in those. It just feels like a rail shooter. That is very disappointing. You
Yeah,
could not
yeah,
fire
you
a
know,
shot
it's
and somebody's going to crash at the same spot and stuff like that.
yeah,
So
like that the opening to the Nomad
yeah.
Nomad scene is, you know, I played through that probably 6 times, so I know exactly how that scenario plays out. But that's
He's
because
always
I
going to
went,
crash into that building.
yeah, and that's because I went back and I played this game on pre-patch original Xbox One,
You say this.
patched Xbox One, day one patch Xbox One, Xbox One X, and PC, and I did the Nomad start for all of them just so I could get a like a comparison, like a direct 1-to-1 comparison. And boy, that game on that disc is real bad. I can't believe that they put that they printed those discs, because that's that it's kind of unbelievable. I didn't put up that video yet, but I'm not sure if I still kind of want to, as just like, especially that pre-patched OG Xbox One, because there's like, well, I sent you those screenshots of the shadows not having arms on them, and there's like in the Nomad start, there's a helicopter that flies in at the checkpoint. You know, it's a scripted thing. It's just a helicopter that's like a set dressing kind of thing, and like there's no blades on it. It's just the fuselage of the helicopter flying in, and there's no actual blades moving on it, or blades at all. In it like the constant frame rate is like 25 frames per second. It's like it's not even hitting 30 consistently. It's like it's locked at something lower than that. So it's like basically a slideshow that you're playing. It's crazy. And even the patched version, I still had tons of you know, that game starts with you looking into a mirror in the mechanic shop, and like the image of the mirror, my character had just a tank top on, and then when she looks down to look at she like tears the patch of her Baker's Nomad Clan patch off. All of a sudden, all of this, like her jacket, her goggles, the patch, all of this stuff loaded in that wasn't there when I was looking in the mirror.
Oh well.
Yeah, it's just a lot of, and it's a lot of stuff like that. Like, I had this weird bug where every time I looked in the mirror, I had no clothes on. Just every time I'd go into my inventory, I'd put clothes on, and then I'd look in the mirror and I'd just be naked.
Some might see that as a feature, you know.
Well, yeah. Like the dick's poking out of the pants.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully they at least get it up to a point where you can get through most of it without having some of these immersion breaking bugs and stuff. But yeah. All right, that's I guess that'll do it for Cyberpunk.
Hey.
And that's going to do it for our main list of 2020 games of the year. I just want to throw in 2 honorable mentions before we close it out. These are 2 games that I played at the end of the year and didn't really get enough time or finish them to say whether or not they'd rank on my full list. One of them is Ghost Runner, which is another cyberpunk kind of game where you're cyber ninja first-person game where you're going through this cyberpunk future, like mega complex, kind of like the mega those mega apartment buildings and like Dread and stuff like that. And you're just slicing up a whole bunch of people. It's all about kind of like Doom combat puzzles where you go into an area and you have to execute all of the enemies quickly and effectively, not stealthily. There's no stealth in it. It's very much you're just trying to dodge and jump and catch the enemies off guard as much as possible. And it's super fast, like instant restart if you get hit. You only can get hit once. You only have one shot you can get hit by, and they got like, laser guns and stuff like that. So they're shooting at you, and it's extremely difficult, kinetic, very fast paced. Looks really amazing. Like the all of the like the world that they create looks really great. Really great cyberpunk cyberpunk soundtrack. It's just I didn't play enough of it. I played like about an hour or so on stream. That was the first time I had played it, and I enjoyed it, but I'd really want to put more time into it before I'd say it's like a top game of the year for me. And another one is Call of the Sea. This is another kind of indie walking simulator / puzzle game where you're exploring a tropical island looking for your husband who's gone missing, and you're just solving some pretty simple puzzles. It's not really super challenging. Kind of like got some Myst vibes to it, where you're finding different pieces of a puzzle and then bringing them to somewhere else and putting them into the right spot. The story definitely has some Lovecraft stuff going on in it. There's like and there's like old gods and like a race of ancient fish people. So it's got all that kind of stuff going on, but I haven't quite finished it yet, so I don't know how the story wraps up. But it's a good. It's pretty. Seems pretty short. Like I think there's only like 6, maybe 7 chapters in it, and each chapter is about an hour long, depending on how long it takes you to complete the puzzles. So that's good. That's also, that game's also on Game Pass. So if you have Game Pass, you can check that out.
Seems lighter than your usual Lovecraft inspired game.
Yes, it isn't like. Yeah, it isn't. It isn't Call of Cthulhu. It isn't like drenched in that kind of Lovecraft aesthetic or anything like that. It's more of like a I think it's gonna get there. Like it's like slowly going in that direction. But it starts out a little bit more unassuming than a lot of the the Eldritch horror style stuff.
Got quite a poppy style, isn't it?
What's that?
Got quite a poppy style, isn't it? It's a chirpy style to it. It's like graphic wise.
Yeah. I mean, it starts off. It takes place pretty much over the series of a single day. So you start in the morning, so the sun's out, I guess.
Yeah.
You could say, but then it gets dark. And as you start to unravel everything that's going on the island, it starts to get a little less, high spirited and a little bit more serious. So.
Cool. I'll look that one up.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is gonna wrap up the 2020 Games of the Year list with a bow on it. And now we're going to jump into our most disappointing / worst games of the year. And I've already done mine with Cyberpunk. That's the only one that I played that I was... I don't... Usually if I play like... a few minutes of a game and I really don't think it's anything great, I don't keep playing it. So I don't really spend a whole lot of time with games that I don't think... don't keep my attention. So... yeah, that's why I don't usually have like this is the worst game I've ever played, kind of games on my list or anything like that. So, but Lee, you are a different sort. You seem to revel in the terrible.
I say I do. It makes me feel better.
So which do you want to start with here? Do you want to start with 13 or do you want to start with Fast and Furious?
Well, I'm going to fuck with you here now because I've just thought of a few other things. So
Oh.
if you don't mind, I'll just throw in a couple of one-liners, if that's
Okay.
all right. Right. Avengers was disappointing to me.
Oh yeah.
Little Hope was quite disappointing. The sequel to Man of Medan, sequel-ish to Man of Medan. The Transformers and WWE games weren't very good. And
Well.
Resident Evil 3.
Oh yeah, Resident Evil 3.
If you know me, it's not only is it surprising that it's not on the best of list, it's
Oh, yeah.
probably even more surprising.
Yeah, I
that
guess
it's
I
on
could
the,
have that on my
disappointing.
list too.
What,
I was-
disappointing?
I was extremely disappointed with that game, especially
that
following
took
up with Resident Evil 2 the year before.
Mm. Almost cynical.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, they're disappointing. We're going to get to the real shit now. Where the first of which was 13, the remake of the Shell Shaded. We're going to keep that in. It's fine. We won't ever add that. Shell Shaded. I've done it again. Jesus Christ. Got that art style that we know.
that art style.
Yeah. And this came out and shit the bed horrendously. It's still broken after many, many, many patches. Still doesn't work very well. I don't know what happened with this one. They removed the one thing that people like from the original, which is the art style. They seem to have got to put AI in. There's footage of me talking about this on. It's glorious. There's not the section I go into where the game doesn't break in some way, whether it doesn't trigger the next section of the level or the graphics fall apart. It's a horrendous game. I can't believe they released it, to be honest with you, in a state.
Yeah.
It's shocking. I can't explain how bad of a state it's in. It got stealth release, really. I didn't realise it was coming out till they notified me that my pre-order was being sent. I was like, oh, okay. And then you find out why. Really shockingly bad, that one. And then there was Fast and the Furious, which kind of broke me. That came at the right amount of time in a very strange year where I didn't know what was happening halfway through that game. It was a surreal experience. Playing Fast and the Furious is a bit like a Zen koan. Where you question reality and what you're playing, and then playing that game. After that comes transcendence, and I just lost my mind playing that. I think I talked to you about me straddling a rocket.
Yeah,
at the end of that
this
game.
is the one
Yeah.
that ends with you like shooting a nuclear missile or something.
Yeah, so I didn't think I'd get in from this game, but it turns out I've become a Zen Buddhist. I'm beyond good and evil. There's nothing else. There's only Fast and Furious Crossroads now. It's all I have left.
There's only Vin Diesel.
It's only Vin Diesel. I don't understand. Right, I'm going to do it now. I don't understand how you can have a complete vanity project and still phone it in. How does that happen?
I don't know. It looks like we're gonna have another one with Arc 2.
You could get.
I was just gonna say, Lee, you ready for Arc 2?
No, nobody's ready for Arc 2. Nobody wanted Arc 2. Certainly not with that. I don't know. What's everybody else's next one? I need to lie down. That was horrible.
All right. So that's Lee's mental breakdown.
Oh,
Hopefully he'll be able to one day destroy that nuclear missile and come back to reality.
I saved the nuclear power plant. It didn't crash into it at the end. It was
Oh,
fine.
good. So you saved the day.
Well, Vin Diesel saved the day.
Oh,
Doesn't he always?
he does. Yeah.
Oh, my head.
All right, Derek. Let's talk about yours. Your first one here is Warcraft 3 Reforged. That's like the remake of Warcraft 3, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't a remake at all. It was the same damn game with a little bit better shading that just didn't work out great at all.
Oh, okay.
Like these are pretty much like my disappointing ones were just like straight up disappointing because they weren't anything different than the original. Like it has no right to be called a remastered or reforged or upgraded version of the game.
Mm-hmm.
They could have just re-released 3 and it would have been fine.
All right. What about Crystal Chronicles remaster? Same kind of deal.
Yeah, same kind of deal, but with this one, the difference is they kind of like it came out on everything. So you can play it PC, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, and your phone. But I think the entire experience was tailored more towards the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And all the versions, like it didn't look good, it didn't look upgraded. It just looked like that original GameCube version that you played before.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't fun. It was not fun to play at
Okay.
all. The only thing that I'd give them that they did right was you only needed one person to actually own the game. Like if you knew you were going to play the whole game as a group, because it is like a group game.
Mm-hmm.
If one person owned it, no matter which platform was that, if they were hosting the game, everybody else could download like the little trial they had of it and experience the whole game with the group.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was pretty cool. That'd be like it's one like it did this right, but everything else is garbage.
Yeah, there's a few games that have done that, like that. That
A Way Out. Was it A Way Out?
yeah, A Way Out. That crazy guy at the Oscars game, and he's doing it. They're doing it with their new game too, which actually looks kind of cool. It looks kind of real
It
crazy.
definitely looks interesting.
Yeah.
I actually just had a couple friends that had played A Way Out. He's like, so when are we gonna play it? I was like, eventually.
Yeah. So Darksiders Genesis.
Oh shit!
So
that exists.
that's
that's
pretty
what I
much
keep
the
saying
thing.
about this
It's
game
like-
when I see it.
They
that
tried
game's
something
gorgeous.
different, and as much as I love Darksiders, it just didn't. I did the stream to show it off, and that was it.
Mhm.
I haven't gone back. Haven't touched it. I haven't had the want to touch it.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily play bad or anything like that. It was like the camera angles, like the couple things for the way it was designed. Like I didn't have as much control over the game as I felt I should have for the type of game they were going with for that.
Yeah,
And that
it's
was
like
kind of
this,
really off-putting.
It's kind of like Diablo style, but not fully.
Yeah, with a locked, like, weird-ass angle of a camera.
Which
Thinking
is
about
not
it,
at
it
all
felt
what Darksiders is famous for. So
No. No, not at all. Like,
No.
if they had unlocked the camera and give you, like, full control of it, like, I'd probably go back and play it. If it's like, hey, this update's out, we fixed camera controls, you have more control of the camera. I'd go back and play it. Because it was, like, some of the stuff I did was fun, but the camera aspect of it was so off-putting
yeah.
that I just did not want to go back and play it.
Yeah, well, I remember on that stream you were having some issues with the platforming too because of the camera angle.
Oh yeah, it made it really hard because if you couldn't quite see an angle or something, you were trying to like jump and turn and do whatever it wanted you to do to grab.
Yeah. Yeah, the platforming with those kinds of locked isometric cameras are always kind of dubious, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I'd say this was
They're
probably.
frustrating.
I'm gonna mention one more disappointing game, but I'd have to say Darksiders was probably the most disappointing because I had hopes for it.
Mhm.
Like the concept of it, the idea. I was like, okay, this is cool. I can roll with this. We can play with another player, and yeah, just that horrible camera execution
Yeah.
just completely killed it.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I still kind of want to check it out on my own at some point, but like Lee said, I keep looking at it and be like, oh, that's right, that came out. I gotta check that out. And then I think about your stream and I'm like,
No.
maybe I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe I could dive back and see if they've updated anything, and then let you know.
Yeah, I mean, even that was so the PC version came out last year.
Yeah.
So the version
Oh
that
yeah, the
came out on
console versions have
consoles,
come out and all now.
yeah, they came out later. So that game would have already been probably patched and updated a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too bad because I do like Darksiders. Those first two games and the third one, Lee, I know you liked the third one, but I really didn't enjoy it very much. Well, I got a little bit ways in and then kind of fell off.
It might be worth having another look because they overhauled a lot of the way that played.
Yeah, I know.
They took off the stamina bar and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it was just it felt a little bit when it
Restricted.
it felt a little bit like they had taken a step back in like the budget department with it, which is probably true because between Darksiders 2 and 3, THQ went out of business and they got bought by somebody else. So it's probably a difficult development for that game. All right, so that covers the most disappointing / worst games of the year. Big long list, big long podcast, but we got through it. We've got our games of the year, our most disappointing games. All in all, I think last year was a pretty good year for games. It was end of a generation, so we had some games that maybe weren't blowing us away in terms of tech and innovation, but they were still pretty good games.
Consistent year, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it was consistent. It was fine, I guess I would say.
It'll do.
It'll do. It's not going to go on the list of the top, but hopefully it
It's
paves
no 2003, is it? It really isn't. It's no 1998.
No, it's no 1998. It's no 2017. But it's not bad. Yeah, so we'll be back in the new year to continue doing what we're doing. Stay tuned for maybe our Resident Evil 7 playthrough happening soon-ish. We'll see. I don't know. No promises, but I do want to play it before that new one comes out. And yeah, probably the next time we'll come back here will be, well, I guess probably when the Medium launches, which is near the end of January. That'll be the first big game that we'll be looking to cover. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks guys for hanging out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to see more. Check out voxelvoice.com for all of our great content, and consider supporting us on Patreon to keep our content ad-free and independent.